A Parent Wins, an adventure of a lifetime. A global expedition dedicated to collecting stories of environmental and cultural preservation while conducting marine research aboard sailing vessel Resilience.
We were in such a mad rush leaving Maine right before this expedition to get the boat ready and get all these systems ready. And still here at the dock, we're fixing little odds and ends, getting our power working properly. And it's just an interesting time. There's a lot of energy because this is sort of, we've always pictured, this is also not just a deployment for Argo, but this is really the start of our circumnavigation. We've been talking to different folks at Hui about deploying these Argo floats for a while now. This deployment's really big for A Parent Wins, and we're really excited. This is our first official sort of partnership with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. It's our first deployment of scientific equipment that we're doing on this scale. And really, Resilience is still sort of fresh out of the box as a research vessel.
Honestly, the Argo program has done a really good job of making these deployments accessible to all sorts of people. They will launch them off of commercial ships. But what makes us unique is where we're willing to go. There are places that other people just don't sail to because it's not like the known sailing route. And science is important to us. So we are willing to go that extra mile to get it done.
Yeah, so we're getting the Argo floats delivered to us right now, and these are what we'll deploy out in the North Atlantic, and it's super exciting because, for me anyways, most of my time with you guys has been up in Portland, like in the boatyard doing tons of boat work. So to finally be kind of like out of Portland, back in the water, and starting the next little stint of our expedition is super awesome, and I'm excited about it.
When we went to go load these floats, basically, what we have to do is they'll bring the floats down to the dock, unload them. You have to be careful. They're wrapped up, but you still have to be careful with them. They are scientific instruments. And once they're on the dock, we went through with the team at Hui to set the floats up, turn them all on, make sure everything's running, and then load them onto the boat.
Argo floats are deep water ocean floats. So they're floats, they're not tethered, which means that they are free floating in the ocean. They go along with the currents. And so these are deep sea floats in particular. And they collect a myriad of parameters. So it's more like chemical oceanography. The core floats collect parameters like conductivity, temperature, density / pressure, as well as salinity. Biogeochemical floats, they are a more complicated version of an Argo float. They measure everything that a core Argo float measures, as well as oxygen, nitrates, pH, downwelling irradiance, chlorophyll, and backscattering. And they are all over. There's a network of them all over the ocean. So there's data being collected all over the ocean.
But the really neat thing about these floats that we're excited about is that they're actually a big part of weather prediction throughout the world. They're an amazing example of cooperation between nations, between organizations, between people. Many different organizations and nations and people work to deploy these floats all over the world and maintain them and use data from them. But it's really significant when we're talking about tough weather predictions because they are a massive part of weather predictions and hurricane prediction around the world. So this is actually a map and coordinates of where we want to be deploying our floats. You can kind of also get an idea of how far offshore we're gonna have to go. And that sort of maps out exactly where we want these floats. We have to be in a radius of 30 nautical miles from each float. But it turns out I think we're gonna do 1 and 2 and then pop down to South Carolina. 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe will be either between here in Bermuda or Bermuda and the Caribbean. And we haven't quite decided whether we're gonna sail out down the coast and then out, or if we're gonna sail out straight to Bermuda and then down. But that's our deployment schedule. Here's our current weather. So heading down to Virginia, which is down here on the chart, we're waiting for wind that will die, then pick back up. We don't want to go against this wind coming south, so we're going to wait for it to pass. And here's Tuesday. Here's Tuesday morning. We'll head down along the coast inshore and wait for the weather window to continue on. But I look at these charts every single day, multiple times a day, just to, one, better understand the patterns of this part of the world, but then also find our actual deployment time and window for weather. The challenge with deploying the floats is going to be, the biggest thing for me, especially as captain, is weather. The North Atlantic of all oceans that I've been in, and you talk to any sailor, the North Atlantic has a reputation of just being pretty tough. So the big concern for this deployment is obviously safety is number one, making sure the vessel's safe and people are comfortable. We just are out there safely. But then number two is also successful deployment of Argo floats. If it's too rough or if we're on top of everything, not only would it be a safety concern with people on deck, but also, you don't want to hit these instruments as we're deploying them. So, the goal is finding the right weather window because of that.
Probably to this side because it looks available. Let's say earlier in the day, around 3 or 4, there's 3. So pretty sporty. So it's either, we'll see what it looks like when we get down there. But it's possible that on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, if we get that, and that's all we're having, then we have this crazy front come through. We might have to talk to Deb and see about deploying all of them afterwards, further south.
Can't we just do the one? And then...
If you do that one, you're going out the stream already, so we'll see. But what I want to avoid is, that's Tuesday, this is the next day, that's Wednesday. So I would say, Monday coming in, that we just came, if we continued down the coast, we might be able to make it around Hatteras on Monday evening and Tuesday. And then I would just be all about getting
Fuck out of there.
getting close to shore
Yeah.
and into the lee. And possibly, depending on where we are, how long that stretch is, possibly pulling into Wilmington or something, waiting for that wind to pass by. Well, we were just looking at the wind charts, our grid files for heading south, and it looks like if things stay the way that they're predicted right now, it's pretty far out so they could change, but we would head out of New York on Saturday, have a nice sail Saturday, Sunday. Monday was when we would be arriving in Norfolk area, but it's a very short window that we have right around then on Tuesday, Monday evening of light air to cross the stream and deploy a buoy. But then we also have to look at the weather following directly after that and just see what that looks like. It looks like there's a massive front that would be coming in from the northwest, from Canada, kind of coming across the United States from the northwest and sweeping off the east coast. So if we're out there deploying 2 floats and then trying to get back in, we could just have, massive front out there in the Gulf Stream off the coast and not be able to really easily make it back in.
Well, we're right next to Stanford. Greenwich is just ahead. Then you can see New Rochelle, and then past that, on the horizon, you can see New York City.
We had an unexpected sort of passage through New York City. Weather kept us in Long Island Sound, and we had to wait out the weather. It's just basically some really heavy winds blowing from the north. And so we decided to go through the East River, which we wouldn't have otherwise done. It, is a longer way to go. There's a lot of traffic. We won't travel, overnight through the East River and through a lot of that. But it allowed for us to, visit more friends and family before we left New England, and then also allowed for this passage through the city, which you're going through downtown, Manhattan, and through Brooklyn and Bronx and everywhere kind of leading up to that. And it's just amazing to take this boat that has been so many places around the world and so frequently wild, sort of out there places, and to take this vessel through one of the largest cities in the world, one of the most infamous cities in the world, and just cruise right on through is pretty neat.
Yes.
So it's we're looking to arrive at Hatteras at around like 3 a.m., 2 to 3 a.m. We're doing like 10 knots right now. Motor sailing just to get down there. The wind's light, but come tomorrow morning, Monday morning, we are looking at like some, I don't know, up to 20 knots coming off of Hatteras, which might be really good. There could be some on the nose. So I'm just hoping that we can, tomorrow morning when we get there, we'll be beam reach, and hopefully be able to kind of pinch up with the wind and just hug it. I've been looking at that drop zone for the Argo float, and it's possible that we can make it, but I really think that we might just get stuck in, and it's hard for us to get into like the Hatteras area with weather coming in, so we'll probably just pass it. I sent an email to Deb saying, hey, how about we do that drop or the next drop down after Charleston.
So we're still pushing to make it down before that big weather system that you showed me on the map?
Yeah. So we're still pushing to make it down to Charleston before this big weather system comes across the country. It's going to be a lot of wind and basically blowing it offshore, and meaning that if we went to go to do a deployment offshore, we're going to end up getting stuck out there. And it lasts for like 4 days. It lasts from basically Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we'd be able to continue on. So it kind of knocks the whole schedule back. And I think it just makes sense to get into Charleston. We'll get our mainsail on. We'll regroup. I sent routes to Deb with Huey that would take us to Bermuda. I think that's the ideal route, honestly, is once we get back in the saddle, once we get back from Thanksgiving, is to head out to Bermuda. Drop one float on the way. It would actually be going up with the stream, so it would be going with this instead of against it. Go through the stream, do some fishing, drop a float, head to Bermuda, and then down from Bermuda south. And we might even still go down south to like Puerto Rico.
So we were working our way down the coast. We were supposed to deploy floats off of the coast of Hatteras and sort of south of there. And yeah, the weather was just terrible. And so we had a weather window to get south, to get to Charleston, so we took that. And it meant that we were into Charleston early. We talked to our partners at Huey to see where we could deploy floats otherwise, given the weather situation. And they're very clear that they don't want us to take any risks, and we don't want to either. For me, our last time in Charleston, I didn't really feel like I was coming home. I felt that I was passing through. I was focused on resilience and what she needed before we went, as we usually were, in this phase of the project. There was always a project to be done on the boat. There was always something that needed to be fixed or improved or installed or whatever it might be. When we were there, I was focused on our sail covers, on our rigging, on our boom, on so many other aspects of the boat. From this point of leaving Charleston, of leaving the United States, we are now going to continue that process. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, of always having a place on the horizon that we're headed, and always having to say goodbye to friends, a good anchorage, hospitality, wonderful things, and move on to whatever comes next. And that's just the beauty of this expedition. So it's time to leave Charleston. Really, again, as always, it's weather. The North Atlantic in November can be really rough. The North Atlantic in December can be really rough. The sooner we got south, the sooner we'd be to calmer, more predictable weather. But where were we headed? Out into the middle of the North Atlantic is a bumpy ride. Almost no matter what. You're crossing the Gulf Stream, You have big weather systems coming in, fronts coming in. You have the change of season, which brings a lot of tumultuous water to that part of the ocean. But we did have a weather window. We knew it was going to be windy, but it was better than what we were going to have for a long time after that. We had 6 Argo floats that we needed to deploy for Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. We had them charted out where we needed to go. And so finally we had to bite the bullet and go. The first deployment was exciting, to say the least. Weather was extremely rough, seas were big, wind was strong. We got the first Argo float out, got it into the cockpit, got it unwrapped. We're careful every step of the way to make sure we didn't bump it, to make sure we were thinking through everything, make sure that we were communicating through everything that we needed to do. We let Woods Hole know that we were about to deploy, and after deployment, thanks to our Starlink, we were able to let them know exactly when we deployed, where we deployed, and they were able to let us know, hey, we see it, it's online, and it's working. That first deployment was really exciting, and all the others after that were great, but that first one was a big moment for us. After that, each deployment we did seemed to always happen around 2 o'clock in the morning. The weather was always rough. We got them out, we got used to it, we moved it on. It was like letting go of little passengers that we had on the boat, because we'd have to pull them out of the bunks that they were strapped down in, pull them out, help them up the stairs, help them into the cockpit, and then send them on their way out into the ocean.
It is 3:13 a.m., Saturday the 14th. We just did our final Argo core float deployment. Have to admit that the float deployments didn't exactly go as planned. The weather was much rougher than we were hoping it would be, and so the deployments were really just like sliding them out of the cockpit straight into the water on the low side when we're way heeled over. And so we didn't get any underwater footage. You know, we could hardly get out on deck to get footage of it floating away. Most of the time we were deploying, it happened to be at night. So it was just, you know, an interesting time. We'll have to do it again. But yeah, it was very successful in terms of hitting our drop points. We hit most of our drop points within like 5 nautical miles.
It wasn't until we made it pretty far south that we had our last float deployment. This float was a little different. It was a biogeochemical float. A lot more expensive, a lot more risk, but a really cool instrument. Luckily that one happened in calm weather. We slowed the boat down. We had the option to. The seas were a lot better. We took it out of its box that it had been sitting in our salon for so long. Brought it up on deck, got it secured, talked about what we were gonna do, and then finally we were able to slowly drop it off the side of Resilience and watch it float away. It would float out behind us, turn itself right side up. We could see it floating with its antennas up in the air, and then it dropped. And that was the last deployment for Argo floats. Our mission to deploy those floats successfully was a success, and now our real goal was to make it to Grenada safely and comfortably. This experience of doing something that takes years, you know, a project, an endeavor that takes years to even really start that endeavor, and for us, years leading up to the moment of leaving the United States is something that I really have a hard time explaining beyond explaining the emotion of it. We're heading to sea, we're going around the world, we're anticipating this moment for so long. And yes, it's thrilling and exciting and enriching, and we couldn't imagine a better way to be spending our time. But yes, it's hard and it's difficult because we choose to do this. But by choosing to do this, it means that we do choose to leave our home, to leave people we love, to take this leap.